Greetings and welcome back to room 303 in our chats with Emily, as we are calling our readings through the poetry of Emily Dickinson. We are using the Johnson edition, and we turn now to one of the more important poems in the entire corpus of Emily's work. Poem number 241, I Like a Look of Agony. Now, right away, how's that for a first line of a poem, which is at times what's going to make Emily so controversial. I mean, how can you say that you like the look of agony on someone's face? Of course, it's like so much that we've seen of Emily's work. It's going to be so multivariate. When it was published in 1890, this poem was actually titled Real. And in many ways, we're going to be playing around again with Emily as theologian. The great scholar of Emily's work, David Priest, has pointed this out. Of the three persons of the Trinity, actually, it was Christ, Jesus, to whom Emily was actually the most drawn, partly because he was, quote, a man of sorrows and acquainted with grief, Isaiah 53:11. And as she would say later in a letter 932, to Mrs. Henry Hills, she said it this way, quote, when Jesus confides to us that he's acquainted with grief, we listen, for that is also an acquaintance of our own. And it is true that, as we have said, Emily is constantly struggling with the question of theodicy. Why must there be pain and suffering in this world? And to what degree is it propedeutic or instructional or didactic? Now, our assumptions are that you've been following our stuff at LearnStrong.net. Down that left-hand side, Chats with Emily, our playlist. I'm hopeful that you've already worked with our set of introductory comments where we talked about our Big Five, theodicy being the fifth of the Big Five. And as well, I'm hopeful that you have already worked through the preceding 240 poems we just finished with Moon, and Star. And if you have been reading all of the preceding 240 poems to get to 241, you know that this kind of hyperbolic language is part of Emily's project. She will say things that intentionally shocks. Now, let's talk about Emily's quest for authenticity. Really, that's what this poem is about. What is real? Some scholars have even put a poem like this in that early modernist period. We immediately think of Ezra Pound and T.S. Eliot, and we'll even quote some lines from Sylvia Plath at the end of this lecture. I think there is a good argument to be made that Emily was so far ahead of her time, and in fact, she kind of helps to produce that modernist movement. Let's enjoy the poem. Notice how balanced it is. When she originally when she originally wrote the poem, she did actually have a line in the middle that we'll talk about. Let's just enjoy the poem. I like a look of agony because I know it's true. Men do not sham convulsions nor simulate a throe. The eyes glaze once, and that is death. Impossible to feign. The beads upon the forehead by homely anguish strung. Now, you get the sense that Emily, of course, has seen this, and whether she's speaking literally or metaphorically, it really doesn't matter. Let's begin with the word like. This is a word that she uses, but often when she uses this word, she actually means respect. And I think that's the better way to read this set of lines. I like a look of agony. I respect a look of agony. By the way, I want you to pay attention to all the hard sibilant S sounds in this poem. Of the 40 words of this poem, 13 of them have that really hard S sound, and we'll get to it in a moment. Now, agony will take us to poems at 412 and 1243. Both of them will use this word agony. She says, though, she respects or likes this look of agony. Notice it's the look of agony. Emily, of course, will have sat in many church buildings where there will have been some kind of icon where, of course, Christ on a cross almost always will have that look of agony. And she says the reason is because I know you can't fake that. I know that it is true. And there it is. I mean, what is it that she likes about this look of agony? She likes that it can't be faked. It is legitimate. It is real. And if there's anything that Emily's always challenging us to do, right? It's one of the reasons why you guys love to read her poetry as high school and college students. It is, we're so fed up with the sham. We're so fed up with the fake. We would love to know that there's something real. She says, I'll tell you something real. Look of agony. That's what's real. She says, Men do not sham convulsion. By the way, this word sham is fascinating. She'll use it again in poem 637, believes all sham but paradise. Because men do not sham convulsion, by the way, start to hear all these S sounds, nor simulate a throw. Notice the kind of strange rhyme or almost dissonance between the words like true and throw, or feign and strung. It's quite remarkable the way she plays this game. Throw will get used in poem 135, and you'll remember it. Water is taught by thirst. And then she'll comment on the eyes glazed once. By the way, in her original writing of this, right in between these two stanzas, she had the words death comes, but then she crossed it out, which is interesting. The eyes glaze once, and that is death. In other words, it's almost as if she's watching someone die. Impossible to feign or to fake, right? The beads up on the forehead by homely anguish strung. A lot has been made of her use of the word homely. It takes us back to poem 84. It is a gesturing towards simplicity and simplifying what is it that is ultimately 100% real. And right away, we find ourselves already gesturing towards other poems. When we get to poem 252, she'll say it this way: I can wade grief, whole pools of it. I'm used to that. But the least push of joy breaks up my feet, and I tip drunken, let no pebble smile. 'Twas the new liquor, that was all. Power is only pain, stranded through discipline till weights will hang. Give balm to giants, and they'll wilt like men. Give Himalaya, they'll carry him. And then when we meet poem 280, we'll play a similar game. And she'll say it like this. She said, I felt a funeral in my brain, and mourners to and fro kept treading till it seemed like that sense was breaking through. When they all were seated, a service like a drum kept beating till I thought my mind was going numb. And then I heard them lift a box and creak across my soul with those same boots of lead again. Then space began to toll, as all the heavens were a bell, and being but an ear, an eye, and silence. Some strange race wrecked solitary here. And then a plank in reason broke, and I dropped down and hit a world at every plunge, and finished knowing then. One of the more amazing poems of Emily's project. Well, what is actually going on here, and how do we read a poem like this? Well, I think, first of all, I love what Gordon, the scholar, said about this poem. He said, quote, agony opens up what lies beyond the limits of language for Emily. That is to say, pain is instructive. There's our message, right? In other words, as we have said about the theodicy question, Emily seems to argue, don't ask why did this happen to me, but rather why did this happen for me? What can I learn from it? At 2b, well, her word choice is amazing. Notice she goes from agony to anguish. And again, as we said, those sibilant sounds are quite remarkable. I like to go to Hamlet for a second. Do you remember when we meet Hamlet? We've given full lectures at learnstrong.net. Do you remember when we meet Hamlet for the first time? Why is it that the clouds still hang on you? Not so, my lord, I'm too much in the sun. And Mama will say, you seem upset. And you'll remember, says, I have that within which passeth show. These but the trappings and the suits of woe. That is to say, Hamlet's disgusted with the very thing that Emily is gesturing towards here. He wants something real. He wants something true. He wants, that is to say, authenticity. We can't help but think of these lines and the great Sylvia Plath in her classic poem, Lady Lazarus. You'll remember that she says it this way. She says, quote, dying is an art like everything else. I do it exceptionally well. I do it so it feels like hell. I do it so it feels real. And you could argue that Plath is maybe channeling this very poem. Okay, how are we going to own a poem like this? Well, how about this? How much do you long for the real, the authenticity, and to what degree do you respect a look of agony? It's a fascinating poem. I hope it challenges you. Thank you.